Good morning, dear students. Let's begin our social science class. Today, we will begin with our geography unit, chapter number 1, Resources and Development. Now, what do you mean by resource? So, before that, let us see the introduction. Can you identify and name some various items used in making life comfortable in our villages and towns? List the items and name material used in their making. Now let's see the definition of resource. Now what do we mean by resource? Everything available in our environment which can be used to satisfy our needs. Means whatever we want, it can satisfy that, provided it is technologically accessible. Means our techniques are this much developed that we can access that resource. Economically feasible means it is affordable, it is not too expensive. And culturally acceptable means everyone should accept it, means our culture should be ready to accept it, can be termed as resource. Now when we think about the interdependent relationship between the nature, technology and institutions, so we see a triangular shape or a pyramid which is formed. Now, let us see what is the meaning of this pyramid. A human being interact with nature, and with the help of technology, they make institutions. Now, these institutions help again in interacting with the nature. Now, this is all about this pyramid. This shows the interdependent relationship between nature, technology, and institutions. Now, let's see this one. The first, our figure 1.2. Resources. These are of two types, natural resource and human resource. Natural resources are further subdivided into two types, renewable resources and non-renewable resources. We'll be understanding the definition in detail afterwards along with examples. And human resources divided into two types, structure and institutions, and second is quantity and quality. Renewable resources are further of two types, that is continuous or flow like wind, water, and biological. Now biological is also subdivided into two types, natural vegetation and wildlife, whereas non-renewable is first is recyclable metals and second is the non-recyclable like fossil fuels. Now you can see one thing over here, students, every resource is being divided into two types, that is the main thing. Now let's see the second column. The process of transformation of things available in our environment involves an interactive relationship between nature, technology, and institutions. Now, we will understand here the pyramid which we have already seen. Human beings interact with nature through technology and create institutions to accelerate their economic development. Now, to accelerate their economy, they create these institutions. Do you think that resources are free of gift of nature as is assumed by many? So no, they are not. Resources are a function of human activities. We make them as a resource. Human beings themselves are essential component of resources. They transform material available in our environment into resource and use them. These resources can be classified on the following ways. First is on the basis of origin. Now you can see over here on the basis of origin we have biotic and abiotic resource. On the basis of exhaustibility we have renewable and non-renewable. On the basis of ownership we have four: individual, community, national and international. And on the basis of development we have four again: potential, developed, stocks and reserves. We'll be discussing them in detail now. Now there is one activity for you, that you have to identify at least two resources from each category. Now let's see the definition along with the examples. Now the questions that can be found over here is that describe the type of resource on base of origin, or on the base of exhaustibility, or on other basis. Or it can be that what do you mean by biotic or abiotic resource, what are renewable resource, what are national resource, what are international resource, what are stocks, what are reserves. These all things can also be asked, so we have to be prepared for that. Now let's see. First, biotic resource. These are obtained from biosphere and have life, such as human being, flora, fauna, fisheries and livestock. So these are having life, these are living. Abiotic, all those which are composed of non-living things in our nature are abiotic, like rocks, metals, river, water, mountains, etc. Renewable resources on the basis of exhaustibility. Now what do you mean by exhaustibility? When some resource or the other is exhausted after some time, or due to its continuous use it is exhausted from the nature, then it is exhaustible. Now For this we are having two types, renewable and non-renewable. Renewable resources, the resources which can be renewed or reproduced by physical, chemical or mechanical processes are known as renewable or replenishable resources. For example, solar and wind energy, forest and wildlife. The renewable resources may further be divided into continuous or flow, means which can be renewed or which can be reproduced by some mean like mechanical, chemical or physical process. And we have discussed the examples. Now see the non-renewable resource. These occur over a very long geological time. Mineral and fossil fuel are example of such resources. These resources take millions of years in their formation, and some of the resources like metals are recyclable, and some like fossil fuels cannot be recycled and get exhausted with their use. So these are the renewable and non-renewable resources. Now on the basis of ownership, we have four types we already discussed. Let's see the individual resource. Individual resource refers to those resources which an individual or a person owns, which is not accessible for that whole community or country. These are also owned privately by individuals. Many farmers own land which is allotted to them by government against the payment of revenue. In villages, there are people with land ownership, but there are many others who are landless. Urban people own plot, house, other property. Plantation, pasture land, pond, water in well, etc. are some of the examples of resource ownership by individuals. Make a list of resource owned of your household. Also, we see many resources that we own every day. That is the individual resource. Community owned resource. There are resources which are accessible to all the members of community. Means everyone within a community can access to the resources. Those resources are referred to as community resources. Village common like grazing ground, burial ground, then village ponds, public park, picnic spots, playgrounds. These in urban areas are de facto accessible to all people living there. Means these are accessed by the whole community. Everyone has an access to it. National resources. Technically, all the resources belong to a nation. The country has legal power to acquire even private property for public good. If someone has an individual resource, then a country has a right to seize that individual resource for the development or for the good of welfare. You might have seen road, canal, railway being constructed and the fields owned by some individuals. Urban development authorities get empowered by the government to acquire land. All minerals, water resource, forest, wildlife, land within political boundaries and oceanic area, that is up to 12 nautical miles or 22.2 kilometer. Underline this is very important. Means outside a country up to 12 nautical miles in an ocean, all the things, resources which are there belong to the nation itself. These are will be categorized under the national resources. From coast terms as several water and resources therein belong to the nation. Now let's see international resources. These are the international institutions which regulate some resources. The oceanic resources beyond 200 nautical miles of the exclusive economic zone belong to open ocean, and no individual country can utilize these without the concurrence of the international institutions. First, you need to take the permission of international institutions to access these resources. These belong to exclusive economic zone. Means no single country can have access to it unless you have a permission. Do you know that India has got the right to mine manganese nodules from the bed of Indian Ocean from that area which lies beyond exclusive economic zone? Identify some of the resources which are international in nature. So there will be many deep inside the oceans, far away from countries, will belong all to international resource. On the basis of status of development is our now the next heading. These further are divided into four: potential, develop, stock and reserve. Potential resources. Resources which are found in region but not have been utilized. Like western part of India, particularly Rajasthan and Gujarat, have enormous potential for development of wind and solar energy. But here these are not being developed properly. Developed resources. Resources which are surveyed and their quality and quantity have been determined for utilization. The development of resource depend on technology and the level of their feasibility, means how feasible they are. Those are developed resources. Means they can be surveyed in their quantity and quality, and they can be utilized. Now stock. Materials in the environment which have potential to satisfy human needs but human beings do not have appropriate technology to access these are included among the stock. Means among the stock and potential resource, the potential resources, the main thing is that we know about those resources, but we do not have appropriate technologies for that. Whereas in stock, these are not known by us, as well as we do not have any technology. For example, water is a compound of two gases, hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen can be used as a rich source of energy, but we do not have advanced technical know-how to use it for this purpose. Hence it can be considered as a stock. Means if you want to create water, and because of the increasing demand of water, we need to develop water, so we can make it from hydrogen and oxygen, but we do not have any such technologies which are made which can convert this thing. Hence it can be considered as a stock, and the reserves are the subset of a stock which can be put into the use with the help of existing technical know-how, but their use has not been started. These can be used for meeting future requirements. River water can be used for generating hydroelectric power, but presently it is being utilized only to a limited extent. Means we have technology, we know about it, but we do not use it much. Thus the water in dams, forest is a reserve which can be used for the future. There is an activity further. Prepare a list of stock and reserve resources that you are familiar from your local area. Now let's see a 3-mark important question: development of resources. Resources are vital for human survival as well as for maintaining the quality of life. It was believed that resources are free gifts of nature, and as a result human beings use them indiscriminately, and this had led to following major problems. Now this is another important 3-mark question, that how the human beings or human activities has caused the depletion of resources. Now the points will be: first, depletion of resource for satisfying the greed of few individuals. Means some people are greedy and they want more and more resources, that is the major cause of depletion. Accumulation of resources in few hands, which in turn divide the society into two segments, that is have and have not, or rich or poor. Like we saw in the case of French Revolution, that time the bread, which was a very important part of their daily livelihood, was only owned by rich people and not by poor people, and that is the main reason which divided them into rich and poor. Or we saw that there was a division among first estate, second estate and third estate. Third one, indiscriminate exploitation of resource has led to global ecological crisis like global warming, ozone layer depletion, environment pollution and land degradation. So this is another important use, or we can say this is another important problem, that the indiscriminate use of resource lead to environmental problems. An equitable distribution of resource has become essential for sustained quality of life and global peace. If the present trend of resource depletion by a few individuals and countries continue, the future of our planet is in danger. Therefore, resource planning is essential for sustainable existence of all the form of life. Now you might think, what is the meaning of sustainable existence? Sustainable existence is a component of sustainable development. Now what is a sustainable development? Sustainable economic development means the development should take place without damaging the environment, and development in the present should not compromise with the needs of future generation. Now there are 2 points included here. This is a 1-mark question. First is there should be no environmental degradation. Second is that you should use its limit or limit its use in such a way that it should not compromise or the future generation could have access to it. Now there was Rio De Janeiro Earth Summit of 1922 also, and Agenda 21. Let's read it. First is Rio De Janeiro Earth Summit of 1992. That is a 3-mark question. In June 1992, more than 100 heads of states met in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil for the first International Earth Summit. The summit was convened for addressing urgent problems of environment protection and socio-economic development at the global level. The assembled leaders signed the Declaration on Global Climatic Change and Biological Diversity, and the Rio Convention endorsed the Global Forest Principles, and it was their adoption of Agenda 21 for achieving sustainable development in 21st century. So they had addressed the urgent problems of environment protection and socio-economic development. What is Agenda 21? It is a declaration signed by world leaders in 1992 at the United States Conference on Environment and Development, that is UNCED, which took place at Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. It aims at achieving a global sustainable development. Now, what was the main Agenda 21? To attain a global sustainable development. It is an agenda to combat environment damage, poverty, disease through global cooperation on common interests, mutual need, shared responsibilities, and one major objective of Agenda 21 is that every local government should draw its own local Agenda 21. This is what the government wants, that every local government should have its own agenda 21, that is to make a sustainable development. There should be a global sustainable development so that we can combat with the issues like environment damage, poverty, disease and many other problems. That's all for today, students. Thank you and have a nice day.